From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. Today I'm with someone who's been well known in the WordPress community, and that's Jeff Chandler. We're going to talk about WordPress more as a potpourri. It's talk about everything and anything. And we're also going to talk about Jeff's new project, WP Mainline. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy this engaging conversation with Jeff. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. I'm here with Jeff Chandler, and those in the WordPress community should know Jeff well. How are you today, Jeff?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
And I am the center of the universe, not Toronto.
Oh, I knew that joke was coming. Somebody listens to intros before he gets on his show, the smart man he is. So Jeff's been involved in the WordPress community for many, many years, and he kind of got out of it and got back into it. And I thought we'd get him on and have a chat where Jeff actually didn't have to be the host for a change, so which he seems to like. So tell us a little bit about your background in the community, Jeff, for those who don't know or new to the community, and what you're working on today.
Well, I got involved with WordPress about 2005, 2006, maybe. It was at the time where I had much of my experience was with Joomla. And boy, way back in the day, this is when Joomla used to be known as Mambo, but Mambo had this big infighting thing that was going on because a corporation or business owned it. And there was actually a fork created from Mambo, which became Joomla. And then Joomla created this nonprofit organization called Open Source Matters. And that was pretty cool to kind of be a part of all that. Fast forward all these years later with WordPress, I kind of got to see some of that transpire with WordPress. But back in those days, I was familiar with Joomla, and I was looking to start up a new website to write about all of these Web 2.0 services and technologies that were out and about, like the really cool gradient generators or the button generators, all those things that looked like shiny buttons and everything that was missing vowels. All those websites back in the day. Because writing about it was a cool time to be part of the web and online and have websites, because there were new ideas, crazy ideas, and different ways of doing things every which way you looked. I mean, it was just all this creativity. And what I did was created this new website. It was called Jeffro 2.0 or 2pt0.com. It was a horrible domain, but it worked at the time. And that was the first time I actually installed and worked with WordPress. I think I used cPanel and Softaculous, and it's just a script that has a bunch of different CMSs you can install. It'll install them automatically for you. I think it's still around, actually. I haven't been on a cPanel host in years, but I used that. My first use of WordPress, I didn't like it. I couldn't get to grips with it. But at the time, the thing that WordPress had that Joomla didn't, because you had to pay for it to build it in, was comments. And I wanted comments for my reviews and my articles, and WordPress had that. So I ended up going back to Joomla, messed around with it for a while. And then I said, all right, I'm going to give WordPress a second chance. And when I did, I fell in love with it. And that's when I found out that you could just go into certain files, change a couple parameters, and boom, like you got things working the way you want it to work. And then there was all these plugins. Writing content was easy. I had categories, I had pages, I had tags. And at that point, WordPress was very young still in its day. And it was just really cool to be part of this community where a lot of us seemed to be getting onto WordPress at around the same time. And we would be writing blog posts about what we're learning, things we've noticed, news that's going on in the WordPress sphere. And after my time in the sun with the whole 2.0 stuff, that didn't last very long. I ended up getting a paid writing gig for weblogtoolscollection.com in about 2000, 2007, the end of 2007, 2008. And Mark Ghosh, at the time, he was the founder of webloggtoolscollection.com. And that was like the site for WordPress stuff at the time. It was in the dashboard. That's where you went for news, to see the latest plugin releases, the latest theme releases. That's where you went to kind of get a feel, the pulse of the WordPress community. And my first paid writing gig was for that website. And Mark actually reached out to me. I didn't reach out to him and said, hey, I've noticed that you've gotten a lot of traction and you enjoy writing about WordPress. How would you like to get paid to do this? And I said, what? I said, wait, is that possible? Is that a thing? You can get paid to write about WordPress? He said, yeah. So we made a deal, and man, that was pretty cool to be getting paid to write about WordPress. And then from that point on, I developed a following on webloggtoolscollection.com, and eventually the domains of wptavern.com became available. I ended up getting those, started my own thing, and the rest is history. I did that for a number of years, ended up selling it to Matt Mullenweg in 2011, but the public didn't know who I actually sold it to until about 2013. And I stayed on for a number of years after that as an actual employee of Audrey Company, which at the time was Matt's personal investment firm that he has. So I stayed on there for a while, and then eventually I left the site in August of 2019, and I kind of went away for 2 years. And after doing all that WordPress writing and being involved in the community, those 2 years, I needed that, to be honest.
Yeah. The one thing about the WordPress community is it's pretty tight, I would say. Like, everybody knows.
Oh, it definitely has its cliques.
Yeah. And everybody knows everybody. Like, there was a conversation going on Twitter, which you were jumped in on, and we were talking, I think it was Bob WP, Bob Dunn, it was Joe Castellano, it was myself, it was Todd, and we were talking about the script and some of the new podcasting features, and everybody was jumping in and having their helpful piece of input into how's the best way to do this, right? So
yeah, my helpful piece of input was, great, look at all these guys checking it out. I have a podcast, now I have to check it out. Well, that's my input.
that was my input too. I mean, it was a conversation. I think it all started because Todd Jones actually tagged me on a tweet and on Joe's tweet and said, this is cool. And then it just kind of had legs. But it's one of those communities where I think people are pretty open to sharing their information, even across guys like Matt Medeiros, who as well, who's a loved podcaster in that area, and so forth. Nobody has a problem sharing information, which is surprising compared to some communities, right?
Yeah, and if you ask folks like Corey Miller, who used to run iThemes, back in the day when the theme companies, when I say back in the day, I'm talking about like 2009, 2010, 2011, the time when there was a lot of theme shops opening up around WordPress, where you had Genesis, which became Studio Press, you had iThemes, you had Press 75 and a couple other theme companies that existed. And these guys and gals did not view each other as strict competition. They would actually go to WordCamps and they would all hang out together. They'd buy each other dinner, they'd buy each other drinks at the bar, and they talk about what they're going through, their experiences. And it was kind of weird at first, but then as you stay and get involved in the WordPress community long enough, you realize, that's just the norm.
Yeah, it so is. And
like you and I, fictitiously, you and I could be in the same product space. We could be going after the same customers. And I'm sure at some level there's a competitive aspect there. But if we're at a WordCamp or something, I'd walk up to you and say, hey, let me buy you a drink, or you want to go and have a talk somewhere? What are you going through? This is what I'm going through. We would share experiences, even though, technically we're competitors.
It's so true. And I think part of that brings it on is we all have our niches and our separate space. And, you take somebody like Corey. Corey's got vast experience. Before we got on to record, we were talking about AJ Morris. And I know AJ went on from his own shop, went from Headway to doing some work for the iThemes brand. And I think, and don't quote me, I think AJ's with Gravity Forms now. So, these guys have vast experience and they're bringing it across the spectrum. And it's actually really good for everybody else, as far as I'm concerned. So,
Yeah, the WordPress community as a whole, from what I've learned over the past 12 years or so, is that most people are kind, most people are generous, most people are willing to share information, most people are willing to share their experiences and help out if they can when necessary. Most people are welcoming, are friendly, and just want the best for themselves and for as many others as possible. And those are all the great things about the WordPress community. And like every other community, there are people you don't want to mess with. There are people you don't want to be involved with. There, you could say, people that you get negative energy from. I mean, every community, WordPress is made up of so many people. That's just the reality of things. But by and large, I've had an overwhelming positive experience in the WordPress community.
yeah, and I would say, Jeff, I have too. I mean, you're a good example. I think we've talked in tweets over the years, and I reached out to you and said, why don't you join me? And you're like, you were all for that. And that's what I like about this community. And I learned so much, and I've got so many friends in the community that it's hard to kind of say no sometimes, if you know what I mean. So let's jump into our latest project, WP Mainline. How did you come up with the name and the whole train theme with that?
Well, I've been a avid rail fan, and that's what you call somebody who is into trains, likes taking pictures of them, just likes watching them go by. There are other terms you can use, but they're kind of derogatory, so I won't go into those. But I was thinking about, quite a few people contacted me, reached out to me and said, I miss your writing. I miss the post that you would write. I miss the way you wrote those posts. I miss listening to you and John James Jacoby on WordPress Weekly. I've had a few people actually who told me they were going through a podcast withdrawal ever since WordPress Weekly disappeared, which I thought was made me scratch my head. But I said, okay, that's cool that I was missed that much. And man, it's awesome to be wanted and to be missed that way. So I started thinking about it, and I said, well, if I come back, what can I do? What can I do? And if I come back, it's going to be under my terms, and I can do what it is I want to do. I am my own boss. I'll do things my way. So I started thinking about various train terms and how they would relate to like a site dedicated to news, things that were topical, that were updated, community. And I thought about where I was or where I go to visit trains and see them come by oftentimes. And there's 4 main lines that converge together, 2 for CSX and 2 for Norfolk Southern, 2 major railroad companies. And there's just trains going through there all the time on the main line, because the main line, that's where the trains go. Yeah. And I said, what about WP Mainline? The main line, the main source for community news, commentary, things like that. And I ran the idea past a couple of people, and they said, man, that's awesome. Go for it. Now, unbeknownst to me at the time, and it's been brought up, I did not realize that mainline refers to drug use. Mainline for an IV or whatever it is. It could be used. It's a term for drug use. But if you visit, I don't advocate illegal drug use. WP Mainline has nothing to do with drug use. It's all about trains, baby, choo choo, and all that. There's nothing to do with drugs. I've got enough. The site is designed in a way, and I'm running it, that you've got to be insane to think about drugs other than the whole mainline aspect. But I like the site. I like the name. I think it rings true with what I'm trying to accomplish. So I'm going to stick with WP Mainline. But I ran the idea past a couple people. Then I got a few community members involved with the design of like a playful, like a train logo that I found, and then getting Wapu involved with this, like the WordPress mascot. And he's got this little cool conductor hat. And I said, man, it all kind of came together. And it's to be able to combine my passion and my fun for train watching and train gazing with WordPress. Man, it's pretty cool that I'm able to do that. And it makes doing things a whole lot funner for me.
Yeah, I get that. And, we were talking before we recorded about trains, and I was going to share with you a story, and I thought I'd hold it. I'm an avid model train guy, not so much anymore just because of apartment space and
Now,
things
you
like
want to
that.
talk about a money pit.
Yeah, a money pit. Well, it was so bad, Jeff, when we lived in Montreal, we had an unfinished basement. And my mother threatened my father and I that if I put one more piece of track in that basement, she was going to leave. And so I didn't put one piece of track in. I put 200 pieces of track in. And I said, "So do we have more room in the house? Are you going?" And my mom was just furious that my dad and I, we had them running everywhere for years. It was more my doing. And in those days, I was doing, believe it or not, I was doing N model trains, not HO. So I was doing a pretty small scale. And I've always liked trains. I've been to the Toronto Train Museum. I like train travel. I've done train travel all over Canada. It's just wonderful. So,
I mean, I wouldn't mind doing train travel, but every time I look it up, I go, man, that's too expensive. I can't do that.
yeah.
Like if I wanted to go use Amtrak and do the Lakeshore Limited and go from Cleveland to Chicago, I've got to pay an insane fee where I could just drive there and the train, is going to stop. It's probably going to be late. The Amtraks are always late. And it's just not economical. It'd be fun and I'd love it. But I just, I got to say, and this is completely a tangent and a rant, but I don't know how much longer Amtrak's going to be around because the sleeper cars and the amenities and just it being like a fancy, nice way of traveling seems to be going out the window. Not to mention the economic pressures and COVID and everything else that's taking a hit on the business.
Yeah, it's so true. I've done the
We need to bring back steam-powered passenger rail service. Bring it back, baby.
I knew that was coming. We actually have a train. I don't know if you're aware, called the Canadiana, Jeff. It runs from Vancouver to Toronto and comes right through the mountains. And I've done that route twice, not in years. And the reason I haven't done it again, frankly, is cost. It's just really expensive to do one way. And then we've got another train that goes from Toronto to Quebec. And then from Quebec, you can get on a train that takes you through Eastern Canada, up through like the Gaspé and along the water and down in the Nova Scotia. That's a treat too. So train travel in this country is still pretty big. So you're back at the podcast with John James Jacoby, who I absolutely adore as well. And how's that going so far? You are 4 episodes in or 5 episodes in?
We're 5 episodes in. Episode 6 will be tomorrow. Things are going great. It's great to be reunited with John. I really enjoyed doing the show with him. I also do the show with Malcolm Peralty, who is a fellow Canadian. Yep. In fact, where he lives, he could see trains going by from his house. So, that's pretty cool where he lives. But I enjoy having them both on the show. They both provide different perspectives and unique viewpoints on WordPress and the news of what's going on during the week. And it's pretty cool. This is the first time I've kind of had a podcast where I'm actually able to mix and mingle co-host and not have the same one every week. So it provides more flexibility. And we've already had some great shows, and some of the best things I ever did with WordPress Weekly were my interview shows.
Yep.
So what I'm planning on doing is allowing the WP Mainline podcast to be WordPress news centric, what's going on in the community. And I want to start up a new podcast, a secondary one called The Junction, where I bring people on throughout the WordPress community. And we talk about WordPress and stuff like that, but we also talk about life, work-life balance, some of the ancillary things that surround a person's life. And we kind of get more into the depths of, their thought processes, their work processes, and just more generalized conversations, a more laid back setting. And I think that'll be really fun. I've got Kim and Jason Coleman are going to be my first guests from Paid Membership Pro. They're going to be my first guests on the Junction podcast next week. And, it's going to be great because I plan on talking to them about what's it like running a business, being married? How often do you guys fight? All kinds of weird questions. You never know with me as a podcast host what I'm going to ask and where the conversation's going to go. But I tell you what, you're almost guaranteed to have a great time.
Yeah, it's so true. And I would agree with that, having been such a fan of WordPress Weekly over the years. And now,
oh man, WordPress
Weekly.
there's so much great WordPress knowledge and history that's stored up in all those audio files that I hope that they'll be around. I almost thought about submitting them to the web archive, the Internet Archive, just so that they would be around for posterity. I haven't done it yet. I don't even know if I have the permission to do that, but I may do that at some point. But there's so much great history, and I've had so many awesome shows and awesome conversations with people in the WordPress community just through that show.
Yep.
And in fact, one time I've been to WordCamps where I'll be talking to people and somebody will turn around and look at me and go, "Are you Jeffro from WordPress Weekly?" I go, "Yeah." And they go, "I recognize that voice." And I'm like, it's so cool to actually get to meet up with and talk to people who listen to the show. And but my favorite memory, my favorite feedback is from a woman who was, it doesn't matter her age, but she contacted me and sent me feedback and says, "I really enjoy your show." And I said, "Thank you very much." She says, "I listened to it while drinking wine and sitting in the bathtub, when she was taking a bath." She said she would listen to WordPress Weekly. So I don't know, that's some of the craziest feedback I've ever had, but look, I wasn't complaining. I thought, okay, cool. If that's what's going on, then, then that's fine. But it's been crazy over the years with that show.
No, it's true. And, the amazing thing with podcasting is the people you meet, the community you meet, and what you learn. And I mean, I don't know about you, but every time I've done an interview, every time I've talked to somebody new, the stuff I learn is just absolutely incredible, Jeff. And you can't buy that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a different space, right?
Right. And in the WordPress space, from what I've seen and what I've experienced, nobody is off limits. Even Matt Mullenweg, the co-creator of the WordPress project, you see him at a WordCamp, you can walk up to him, you can ask him a question. You might have to wait in line, you might have to pick a number, but he's cordial, he's polite, and he'll usually stick around and talk to everybody who wants to talk to him or ask him a question. And, at one point, I looked at him and said, man, this guy, he's a very successful man. He runs Automatic. He's wealthy and he's got all this going for him. And the fact that I was able to just walk up to him at my first WordCamp and just ask him questions and talk to him like a normal human being, man, it's really cool.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting Matt. He was up in Toronto for a special WordPress meetup we had about 7 or 8 years ago. And he actually came up just to meet the Ontario group. And he had planned to spend 2.5 hours with us. He ended up spending closer to 5. And he was just obliging. Anybody who wanted a picture with him, I've got pictures with Matt. And he was like, no problem. You wanted to talk about something, you wanted to ask a question. He was very approachable. And there's other people, like you mentioned, Corey Miller. Here's a guy who find it iThemes. And I consider Corey a friend. And Corey's not off limits. He's very accessible to anybody in this community. Another person is Lisa Sabin Wilson, who's written a dummies book on WordPress. Lisa's very approachable in this community. You are. Bob Dunn is. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of who's approachable, right? So, I mean, I think that's what makes a community really special, actually, Jeff.
I agree with you, and I'm proud and glad to be a part of it.
Yeah,
and I'm proud to be able to be in a position where I'm kind of starting a new chapter in it.
Yeah, and I'm glad selfishly to have you back in it. So,
well, thank you very much, sir.
There you go. So let's get on to some trends. And you've been away for a while, but you might have a viewpoint. Your new website, if I recall, is, and I could be wrong, it's mostly Gutenberg, correct? You've done.
I'm using GeneratePress for the website, and use Gutenberg for the content editor. And apparently I'm now using Gutenberg to manage blocks because now we've got the block-based widget manager, or the transition that's taking place. So that's where I'm using Gutenberg. But obviously the future is Gutenberg, all the things, block all the things, full site editing, everything's going to be a block. That's the trend, blocks.
Yeah.
It has been, and it's going to be, and that's that.
So how do you feel about blocks versus a page builder?
I don't have much experience with using page builders. I've used a few in my time. In fact, a long time ago, I actually used Headway, and I thought it was really cool and advanced in the space. I use Generate Press, and I use it to not really build pages. I'm just trying to design my site. I'm not trying to do like membership pages or special archives or anything of that nature. So I don't have vast knowledge and experience with your typical page builders, but using Gutenberg and using it for blocks and having blocks in the content and being able to now take those blocks and turn them into widgets, and not every block for content right now is compatible or meant to be used as a widget or in the sidebar because of space limitations. But I can, a long time, actually, when I first got involved with WordPress, I envisioned, what I wanted was a way to change my theme around, change the layout, move widgets here and there, and be able to do everything via a GUI and drag and drop. And I can create the website I want, the layout I want, without having to write any code. And for the last 12, 13 years, we've steadily gotten to that point where you're able to do that. And, the page builders have certainly advanced that concept over the past few years, prior to Gutenberg. Mm-hmm. But with Gutenberg and the idea of full site editing, to where, what I think of it is your nav menu is a block, your search thingy, your search bar is a block, your footer is a block, everything being a block. And then you could just go into this editor, whether it's the customizer, which probably would offer live preview, or in the back end, you would go to this editor and then you just put the block here, put the block here. These blocks have certain controls that where you can edit and modify them. That's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to be able to move and rearrange a room, AKA my website, without having to hire a builder, a designer, or somebody that would do other research and come up with blueprints and all that other stuff for me. Now, that's not to say that the future I want with WordPress and building sites and themes and what have you is going to demolish the agency or the web design industry and the theme authors and all that. There's going to be plenty of opportunity for them to stick around and to build on top of and improve when Gutenberg already delivers. And we're already starting to see that with themes that are fully block based, which are pretty neat, and they're pushing the space. And everybody should probably keep an eye on Frost WP, which is Brian Gardner's new theme shop, where he's going to be making heavy use of Gutenberg and the various features that it has. But I think with reusable blocks, block patterns, and just being able to do all these things with blocks, and how easy it's going to be to move things around, I think the future of themes and WordPress and design is pretty exciting.
Yeah, I would say it is. I've been a page builder user myself. I've used Elementor, I've used Beaver Builder, I've used Aveda, I've used Divi over the years. Like you, I used Headway at one time, which I think part of the problem with Headway, without going down that story, is they were way ahead of their time by miles. And I decided recently to spin up a personal site because yours truly hates the Facebook monster like a passion. So I needed somewhere to be able to show friends and family some photos and stuff and say, I'm not putting them on Facebook, go here. And I actually spun that up with Astra and Gutenberg and no page builder. So I think there's probably a market for both. It's just where and how it shakes out and where the page builders tie into the blocks. I have to tell you, I am having a tough time getting rid of or used to the new widget areas since they've moved them to blocks. I personally find that really hard. So,
well, this is pretty much the first iteration. They've been working on it for a while, the previous versions of WordPress, but this is the first time where the general public has access to this. And hey, who's what software platform is happy about all this Gutenberg stuff and moving things to all Gutenberg is Classic Press, because they're not messing with Gutenberg. They're sticking with everything. They've got the same old widget manager that's been there. They've got the same old post management screen. And, I'm very curious to see within the next few years how Classic Press evolves, where you have WordPress as it was, which is pretty much before Gutenberg or taking Gutenberg out. And then you're going to have WordPress after Gutenberg, which is what all of us are probably using, and how the two, I wonder how Classic Press is going to evolve and how it maintains its user base and delivers new features.
Yeah, it's interesting because I played with Classic Press about 6 months ago just to see on a test site if it would translate a WordPress site, and it actually did a really good job. But the problem,
when you were using Classic Press, did you say, "Yeah, that's how it used to work"?
No, there's a certain podcaster whose name I shall not name, who loves Classic Press, and he's, even though he's making money in the WordPress space, he seems to dump on the WordPress space. So I'm kind of not into that, but I think it's going to make some people happy, but it hasn't slowed down the growth of WordPress, because we know WordPress just recently crossed the 40% of all websites on the internet. So, I don't think it's.
It's not going to slow down the growth of WordPress, but I'm just curious on how it's going to grow on its own as its own thing, alongside of WordPress.
Yeah, a lot of the plugins, from what I know with Classic Press, are running the WordPress plugins, but as the move to Gutenberg shakes out, you've got that differentiation that has to take place. Like, I know, for example, Yoast has written, the big SEO plugin has written a Classic Press plugin that's separate than a WordPress plugin. So there's some of that going on right now. So I don't know where the market share is going to go, honestly, on that one, Jeff. I don't have a feel for it. I think it's going to take 4 or 5%, and I don't think it's going to go much further. Personally.
How do you feel about WordPress dominating the CMS market share numbers to the point where it's WordPress and it's everyone else, and the closest competitor is 30, over 30, 35, I don't know how, just an insane amount behind in terms of market share. I want to see something new come across, and WordPress is trying to do this right now by reinventing itself through Gutenberg and through React and through JavaScript, and is trying to reinvent itself. But I'm waiting to see something new come along that just does things that you're kind of familiar with on WordPress, but does it in a much simpler, more elegant way, where you think, oh, wouldn't it be nice if WordPress did this? How come they can't do this? Something that WordPress can look up to and say, there's some good ideas and good implementations of features and things that they're doing that we should consider doing over here. I bring on the competition. That's what I want to see. More competition, more competition that motivates each platform to be better.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And I would say one of the biggest spots I have issues is WooCommerce. And both you and I have a mutual friend, Bob Dunn, who does the Do the Woo podcast.
Do the Woo!
Yep. Shout out to Bob.
Actually, I love saying that.
Yeah, Bob's joining me in a couple of weeks, and we're going to talk about Woo. But the problem I have with Woo is there's no competitor out there for Woo. It's either Woo or Shopify. And I know Ninja Forms bought.
Remember Magento? Is that still out there?
Yeah, it's still out there. And Ninja Forms bought the old iThemes plugins and turned them into
WP Commerce. I think they're still going on.
Yeah, and into Ninja Shop, and that went nowhere. And there's no competitors. And I got to tell you, as a designer, I have no issues with Shopify. I think for some things, they're Canadian, number one. They're based out of Ottawa. Number two, they do some things really well. Like, for example, if you have a Shopify account, you get bulk shipping rates to any of the major carriers because Shopify negotiates that. So I'm not an anti guy. You know, it's funny. People will say, oh, you shouldn't put your LMS in WordPress. You shouldn't put your membership site in WordPress. You shouldn't put your anything in WordPress. But by the way, we need WooCommerce. If you get what I'm saying, like I think some of these other services have a market in this world.
And that kind of brings up the topic of headless WordPress, which has been a hot topic, not just lately, but within the past 2 or 3 years, where you can have WordPress on the front, but something else completely different or whatever on the back. Yeah. And, and I saw someone mention this, and I thought it's some food for thought, where with headless WordPress, will we get to a point where agencies, and we might already be going towards this, but where you have agencies and other companies creating their sort of version of WordPress, but it's headless. So you've got WordPress on the front and their own custom solution on the back. And somehow all these different headless solutions kind of eat away or erode WordPress's market share. But I guess I couldn't really do that because it's still WordPress at the end of the day, but it's just the back end would be something completely different. I don't know. The whole headless aspect of WordPress is just interesting for me to think about. I have not used a version of WordPress that is headless, but I imagine at some point I will. But the idea, just thinking about it's interesting.
Yeah. And then the biggest knock against WordPress, of course, is security, right? We all know that. Every time somebody says WordPress, they say security. And I always say, being somebody who's in that space, I always say, so Microsoft security, Apple security, your bank card security.
I mean, common sense goes a long way towards security.
Yeah. And I think there's some things you can do to lock your sites down. And one of the biggest things is simply keeping your site up to date. And I think a lot of people, they say that's too much work. And I'm almost a proponent of people right now where if you want to DIY your website, do it yourself, go ahead and do it. But maybe you should think about getting somebody to take care of it once you do it, because the average small business owner isn't going to do it.
Yeah, and it's getting to the point now where at some point, WordPress core themes, plugins, they're all going to be updated automatically. I think maybe even newer version of WordPress when you install them. I think maybe they have those things all turned on. But security, over the years, I've seen the same complaints about WordPress pop up from time to time. They're misnomers that WordPress is insecure. Like, no, it's not. It's no more insecure than anything else that's on the web. Use a strong password, enable two-factor authentication. There are a couple of things you could do, and they're pretty basic, common sense things. And for the most part, for many people, that's all you need to do. You don't, in my opinion, you don't need to install like an iTheme security and put a moat around your WordPress login page and have alligators and turrets and everything defending your website. What ends up happening in a lot of those cases is that, and this kind of happened with me and WP Mainline, is that with the Cloudflare. Cloudflare. That's it. That's Cloudflare. So many clouds. It's hard to come up with one. But Cloudflare, with their security in their Windows and their application firewall, was actually triggering something to the point where the WordPress default functionality in Gutenberg Editor stopped working because I triggered some kind of rule in their firewall, even though I wasn't doing anything malicious. When you start locking things down too much, you're going to start running into a lot of problems. Then you're going to blame WordPress, thinking that the software sucks, when actually you've just locked everything down too much.
Yeah, I would agree. I typically use, I know on that side, I either use iThemes or WordFence in the back end just because they're easy, but I've done them enough that I pretty well know what I can do, what I can't do, what I can do on certain hosts, what I can't do. And I think that works really well. But I tend to agree, like it's common sense. And the biggest thing in security is have a good backup. And by the way, make sure you can restore that backup. Don't wait.
Yeah.
I know years ago.
I've got plenty of backups. Oh, I just happen to need one. The backups don't work. It's corrupted. Well, so much for having backups.
So my favorite story there was I spent many years before I got into marketing and before I got into tech support. I worked as a COBOL programmer in the insurance business, and we had a site go bad and we had a backup. The only problem is nobody thought to check the tape to see if the backup was actually good. And we went to do a restore. We had to go back actually 3 generations and then roll everything forward, which was just absurd because our backup tapes were bad. So, if you can take a backup, folks, take the time to test your backup before you need it, not when you need it. So that's a bit there. In the WordPress business, there's some maturity going on. And I think what started it off was Salesforce decided to inject a pile of money into Automatic sometime last year. Do you have any thoughts about the maturity that's going on in the business?
I think it's just things happening how they usually happen in business where, if you start to look at what's happening in the WordPress space, and this has been happening for the past couple of years, but now you're starting to get these individuals and these companies that have umbrellas, and underneath the umbrellas are multitudes of plugins or themes. Some of them are individual businesses. Others are just groups of plugins and themes. And you're starting to see more and more consolidation in the WordPress space to the point where it's actually not just one company that's controlling everything. You're starting to see different groups, different companies, different people with these umbrellas. And I suppose that's a great thing for business owners out there that have a mildly to greatly successful plugin business or theme business, that there's plenty of opportunities apparently to sell. It seems kind of like real estate, it's a great time to sell. But but I think what we've also seen lately is when these transitions occur, when company A buys product from company B and then changes the product around, we've seen there's been excellent coverage of this on the WP Tavern the past few months, is that these transitions can go awry. Users can get upset. What they expected and how things worked one way is now changed and different another day. And some of these changes are good, some of them are bad. And I don't know, but I think the consolidation, the way things are going in the WordPress space, it's just typical of how things go. And I think we're just going to see more of it as WordPress continues.
It's happening even with the parent company, Automatic. Who have they bought lately? They've bought a journaling company. That was reported on the Tavern. So
One Journal, I think it is.
Yeah, One Journal. They bought MailPoet, which they're going to integrate into WooCommerce even tighter. And that one personally concerned me because I've been a MailPoet user for a couple of years, and to give Automatic credit, they honored all the lifetime deals out there for MailPoet, so they didn't turn around and say, "Wait a minute here, we're not the same company, so we're not honoring stuff." They did. They injected money I saw in the last couple of days into another email type marketing service. They've bought a CRM for Jetpack in the last while. They've been on a tear themselves. And then you take somebody like Liquid Web and what's been going on with them with iThemes. They also bought Candace, did they not, recently? And they've kind of spun them off as a separate site. And then you've got the WP Engine buying out Flywheel lately, right? So there's a little bit of consolidation going on. I wish somebody would.
Yeah, if you follow the money in the WordPress space and the WordPress ecosystem, and you look at the top of the food chain, and I'm not talking about Automatic, who is it? Who has all the money? Who has the means? Who has the ability? Who has the services? Who is the top of the food chain? Web hosting companies.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm surprised, to be honest with you, and I hope they don't go there, that our friends over at Endurance don't jump into this space. I'm honestly hoping they stay away because you know the issues with EIG and hosting in the WordPress space in the last.
Well, I mean, they've got HostGator, they've got Bluehost, they've got all kinds of other hosts under Endurance International Group. So, I mean, they're kind of already involved with it.
Yeah, 33, and Bluehost is a gold WordCamp sponsor too, because of the money that they just kind of throw at it. And then you got a company like SiteGround that hasn't even gone there yet. And I use the operative word yet because I think they'll jump into this space before it's out too. So, and then to add to it even more, you got companies now saying, not only are we going to offer you managed WordPress hosting, we're going to offer you managed WooCommerce hosting. And there's a lot of that starting to sprout up.
Nexus comes to mind with managed WooCommerce hosting.
That's exactly where I was going, Jeff. Yeah. And how do you feel about that, offering managed WooCommerce hosting? Yeah.
I think it's wonderful. I think managed anything is wonderful, especially for the end user who doesn't want to mess with server configs or having to manage your own Windows server or configure anything. These managed plans are all built around making it as easy as possible for the consumer or the person buying the plan to do what they do best. And that is sell things, write content, publish content, upload, sell, handle distribution. If we, and on the back end, their web host will take care of the technical stuff, and web hosting companies can charge a pretty penny for that kind of stuff, for that convenience, because it's for many people, it's absolutely worth it. It's worth every penny to be able to just focus and concentrate on making money and running your business and just have an entire team managing the technical aspects for you.
Yeah. Being an ex server support guy, even I go to the managed server route now for my clients, because frankly, I don't want to do the server work. It's a pain. I'd rather somebody else do it for me. If I have a problem, I pick up the phone, I say, fix it, and I'm done. So I don't like to do it anymore. So I'm in that ballpark. And I think more and more people are going to go that way as the resources are more and more. Now, what's your feeling on running stuff in the WordPress dashboard or using third-party services like an LMS, like marketing automation, like a membership site? Do you think they should be self-contained or should they be run outside the dashboard? Do you have any feeling on that?
I don't have much experience with running an LMS or any of those software platforms, but I think those companies, whoever's involved, should do what they feel is best, how best they can accomplish a certain task with WordPress. Now, there are certain plugins that if you go into the back end, they have their own sort of one-page React application. However they do it, they have a different dashboard, and it looks weird. It looks different. There was a time where, back when Gravity Forms was released in WordPress, one of its awesome selling points was that it blended right in with the WordPress backend. It looked natural. The forms were natural. The settings were natural. It looked like it was just made and built to be a part of WordPress. And I think there's still value in having an interface like that. But for a lot of other plugins, especially if you're running a SaaS and the plugin is really just a connector, then I think it just makes sense to have sort of your own interface or to manage things in a third-party software solution.
Yeah, and one SaaS that does really well in managing stuff, believe it or not, within WordPress is MailPoet. They actually don't send out their emails from within WordPress. They send it out through the SaaS, but all the internal stuff is managed right in the dashboard, and they've actually made that really clean, which is nice to see. Trends coming up in the next year. Do you have any feel for
Gutenberg?
Besides Gutenberg.
Oh man, come on, man. Let me take the easy way out.
Gutenberg and live streaming and video, right?
Well, I'd say, let's say trends within the next year. Podcasting is going to be one of them. It already is, but it's going to continue, and it's going to increase. Full site editing, we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to see more themes become simply block-based. So we'll have to see in the near future what that entails. But we're going to start to see more of an emphasis on Gutenberg controlling all the aspects of design and whatnot. And then throughout the next year or two, we're also going to see how existing page builders, how they're going to evolve and implement and work with Gutenberg and not against it. Because that's one thing people don't want to be involved in is lock-in. And that's been an issue in the past, could be an issue in the future. But I think page builders that evolve to a point where they can elevate and work with Gutenberg and even enhance what Gutenberg already offers, those are going to be that's going to be the successful route to go. Not doing things in your own way that's completely different, which ends up locking you into some specified way of doing things.
And that's the problem with page builders now is, say, take any page builder, Elementor, Beaver Builder, Divi, Aveda, which is a theme/page.
I mean, all of those do things based on short codes, right?
Yeah. And the minute you remove them, the short codes are gone and you're done. Yep. Yeah. So I think that's a trend. I tend to agree with your first one, the podcasting. I think, it's funny. We talk about podcasting, and you and I have both podcasted. I've been at it a couple of years. You've been at it longer than me. We've got friends of ours, the Bob Dunns, the Joe Casablanos, the Matt Medeiros, who have been at it longer than us. And I thought podcasting would take a dive in the pandemic. And the reason I did was because I wasn't commuting as much to go see clients. I was jumping on Zoom calls. I have to tell you, my personal podcast consumption is gone double. I'm not a big TV watcher, except during the Olympics. So that's, hard to problem. And what I find is when I'm working, I almost always have a podcast on. So I have the ones I like in the WordPress space and out of the WordPress space. And I thought, if I'm not running around as much, my consumption's going to dive. It's actually gone way up. And all the statistics show that podcasting has gone through the roof in the last year. So, so this fallacy, people aren't running around to the office, they're not commuting. What I would bet you, if you looked at your statistics for AM and FM radio, have probably dropped way off. And that, it's easier for AM radio listeners to transition to podcasts, because really a podcast is a digital AM radio show when you think about it.
Yeah, and podcasts are usually episodes are focused on a specific topic you're interested in. You know what you're getting, into. There is usually 1 to 2 advertisements. It's not really commercial heavy, and the convenience of listening to them on a mobile device, it far outweighs. I mean, people aren't walking around with Walkmans or headset radios anymore. It's all digital devices with AirPods or some other Bluetooth connected device. And whether it's doing laundry, whether it's just sitting outside, whether it's mowing the grass, whether it's walking in the park, you can listen to podcasts, pretty much anywhere, anytime. And the people who subscribe to and listen to certain podcasts are diehard fans. They're there for you. They want to listen to you. They want to listen to the content you're producing. They're very loyal.
No question. I mean, I've got, as I said to you before when you did Windows Weekly, I listen to WP Mainline every week. I think I'm an episode behind, but we'll fix that. And there's a couple in the space, Bob Dunn, Matt's, Joe's that I listen to quite regularly. And then the other stuff I listen to is all out of the space. It's a lot of it's business related. One of my favorite podcasts is a podcast called Business Wars by Wonderly, which talks about 2 companies in the space and how their battles happened. And they tend to do like 6 and 7 set episodes and things like that. And, I'd rather do that. So I'll be washing dishes or doing housework. Last night I was cleaning a bathroom with a pair of Bluetooth earbuds in, listening to a podcast. So it's the kind of thing.
So listening to the podcast, does that make it easier or just more tolerable to clean the bathroom?
Yes, it does. No question. That or scrubbing the floors or vacuuming. That's the other one that goes on that one. Or mowing the lawn, Jeff. That works too,
It's interesting thinking back to how I started WordPress Weekly. I used to listen to the WordPress podcast. It was like the official WordPress podcast called WP Community. Or it might have been just called the WordPress Podcast with Charles Strickland as the host. And Malcolm Peralty, I think, was the host as well back in the day, long time ago. And I will listen to them talk about WordPress stuff. And I was so involved in the WordPress space and the news that I would be upset if they didn't mention a certain topic or didn't mention a few comments that went along with it. I was like, man, talk about this more. So I said, you know what? The only way to fix this is to start my own show. And I did. And next thing you know, I'm having 1 to 1.5, 2 hour long podcast because I was talking about WordPress so much.
Yeah. It's funny, when I got into podcasting, I got in because A, I like the podcast format, but B, believe it or not, I do writing for clients and I don't like doing my own writing. I'm awful. So my answer to how to keep my blog going was, I'll just start a podcast and be done with it. And then I do all my show notes through an AI service. So that made it even easier. So I just said, I can interview, I can build a community, I can talk to people, and then I don't have to think about writing it. So I was much happier that way. So that's how I started. But, another story is being in a city like Toronto or in a suburb of Toronto, I don't have a car. So when I run around on public transport and everybody says to me, is that tolerable? I said, with a podcast in my ear, it is. It's not wasted time. It's actually downtime. So, there's different ways that people listen, and it's quite interesting to watch. If there was one thing you could see happen in the community, what would it be?
Put
you on the spot.
If there was one thing.
Yeah. Or two things.
Well, I would like to see a big Orange Heart, which is a big mental health advocacy nonprofit group in the WordPress space. I'd like to see them get to the point where they don't have to worry about funding, where they could just do events and what have you. Money is secondary to their objective of what they're trying to accomplish. And I wouldn't mind seeing HeroPress also become something that becomes, more money is not an issue, and where Topher is able to expand upon the ideas that HeroPress offers. For those who haven't been there, HeroPress is a hidden gem. It's not I say hidden gem. It shouldn't be hidden, but it's a gem of the WordPress space and community because it's allowed people from all walks of life, how WordPress has affected them, how it's changed them, how they've gotten involved, and people write their stories, their HeroPress stories, their essays, and they're published on HeroPress, and they're inspirational. It's everyone is definitely worth your time to read. And what Topher is doing over there with HeroPress is just awesome. So I'd like it to get to the point where they just receive permanent sponsorship so that Topher is able to take his vision and turn it into a reality where finances, they might not even be an issue now, but I wouldn't want finances to come to get in his way of being able to do what he wants to do. So with that, and other than that, I don't know. I haven't really, that's the interesting question.
Yeah, I really like the comment about Big Orange Heart because, mental health is a big deal. We also know beyond personal challenges, we know that the pandemic has made it even harder. They've really tried to do a good job of supporting people. I so heartedly agree with that one, more than most people, and having been there, and I think it's really important. And I also think the one thing we need to keep is the culture of our community going the way it is. I mean, we reach out, we talk to people, we bounce ideas off people. I know last week I was in a DM conversation with a couple other people, And I said to one of them, I'm really sorry to take your time up. And he said to me, that's what the community's there for. And as I say, and we've talked about in this podcast, we are so lucky to have the community that we have. And that's pretty special. I really think it makes for a different life. And
So in thinking about your question a little more, I think something I would like to see across the board is an onslaught, a slew of new blood with fresh perspectives on WordPress accomplishing tasks, and have those people be from all walks of life, diversity, nationality, skin colors, doesn't matter. Have them all. Just, I want to see new perspectives, new ideas, new ways of getting things done. I would just like to see so much of that, just a large, like a rebirth of WordPress, just all new, all fresh, new perspectives.
Yep.
Man, that would be exciting.
And they get some of those people working for Automattic too, because
I'm sure that would happen at some point.
No, and by the way, I'm not saying that to bash Automattic. I think, if Automattic didn't do what they did, we wouldn't be where we are. So I wasn't meaning it as a bash comment. I think it would help the community more than hurt it, to be honest with you. Yeah. I like that idea.
Well, it's funny looking back in 2008, 2009, when I was first writing about WordPress. I remember creating a blog post and the title was, "Is Automattic Evil?" Well, 12 or 13 years later, I could confidently tell you Automattic is not evil.
No, I would agree. I've had, really good dealings with some people up at Automattic over the years. And I think generally they have people's interests at heart. I mean, their balancing act is always WordPress.com versus WordPress.org, and where do we go? And it's a constant balancing act. But I think they're starting to get there, to be honest with you. And I think they actually make my job easier. So I'm not in the evil camp. Some people are. I'm not. So I just don't see it. So where does Jeff go from here with WP Mainline? Where are you going in the future? You've started a membership area. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and what you're going to do about that?
Yeah, so subscriptions are opened up on WP Mainline, and right now, I mean, it doesn't give you access to any special content or anything. It's more like a hey, you want to support me in the work I'm doing? You subscribe, give me your money, and I'll make the content. I think it's pretty clear cut, simple, relationship that we can have. And if you don't like what I'm doing or you don't like my content, then you can get me where it hurts. You can unsubscribe, and that's less money I can pay the bills with. But by and large, I'm very thankful for everyone who has shown their support and who has subscribed to the site already. If you go to wpmainline.com, there's a link at the top that says subscribe. Click at that, and then you can make your choice between the two options I have available. In the future, what I would like to do is maybe create some promotional offers, create some exclusive content, or I don't know. I need to think of different ways to increase the value of what the subscription entails. But it's not, that's down the line at a different station. Right now, I'm just trying to keep the train rolling. I'm loading the steam train up with coal. We're moving. We have momentum. We got to keep the momentum going. And at some point in the future, I'm working to create a page to have like a business directory or something that can help me offset the need for having to have so many new subscriptions from users. The businesses and companies, I think, will be able to offset that cost. But those are things I'm working on in the future. And right now, it's just a matter of getting back into the swing of things, getting content published on a regular basis, getting my voice out there with the podcast, and just trying to get going, trying to get rolling here.
And do yourselves a favor, go over to WP Mainline, subscribe to Jeff's podcast. It's well worth the listen to. As I said to him before we went to record, I miss WP Weekly, longtime fan, and go subscribe to it. I know having Malcolm and JJJ on will enhance the podcast greatly. They're both good co-hosts, and they both love this community as much as Jeff. So go over there, help them out, subscribe. How can somebody get a hold of you, Jeff, if they need you?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter because at all times of night, I seem to be able to tweet stuff. So you can follow me on Twitter at Jeffro, JEFFR0. Or you can follow WP Mainline on Twitter at WP Mainline. You can find all that information on the website. And if you need to contact me, if you want me to review a product or you want to let me know of a product that you're working on in the WordPress space, whether it's a plugin, a block, blocky theme, whatever, just go to WPMainline.com, click the contact link above, and write out your message through the contact form. It will arrive in my inbox, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and reach out. Jeff's pretty approachable, so if you need anything. Thanks for joining me, Jeff. Thanks for a great conversation, and all the best for WP Mainline.
No problem. Thank you very much, sir, and do the woo.
Thanks. And Bob, you can send your $5.90 to Jeff in the morning. Have a great day, everybody. Bye for now. A very special thank you to Jeff Chandler for joining me on this edition of the SDM show. Remember to check out his project at WP Mainline and support him because he tends to give a lot back to the WordPress community. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for listening to the SDM show. The show is a production of Stunning Digital Marketing, and all rights are reserved. Rob can be reached by email at vip@stunningdigitalmarketing.com, on Twitter at Rob Cairns, on his website, stunningdigitalmarketing.com, and on his website there's links to all his social media platforms. This show is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much. Keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Make your business succeed.